If you haven't seen part one of this schizophrenia's, topic, part one, then I would suggest you to go back and watch that video. And if you haven't read this topic before, I would suggest you to go back to your books and read it, because something's not going to make sense, and it makes more sense once you read the book. Okay, so do not buy these books, or do not use these books anymore. Buy this or get the PDF form from me. I have the PDF form of this book, but not this one, and I use this one specifically because it's so much sophisticated, and all the knowledge that you need is in this book. Moving forward, you will expect a biological explanation, genetic and biochemical one, and then you will also be expecting a psychological explanation. For genetics, there was done a classic research by Gottsman and Shield. They said that schizophrenia is in fact inheritable, and so they did a twin study where the concordance rate in the monozygotic twins, which share 100% DNA, were 42%, meaning out of 100 monozygotic twins, 42 had schizophrenia, both of them. And then dizygotic twins share 50% of DNA, and they got 9% of concordance rates. So it was concluded that was due to the shared amount of DNA. There was also contemporary research. Contemporary means the recently done research, and it was done using genome-wide association studies. I did not mention it, the spelling, anyways, you can search it on Google. So you compare, in these studies, they compare the genomes of many people to find the genetic markers associated with particular disease. And here we are talking about schizophrenia in specific. What is polymorphic? Polymorphic is the genes that has one or more, alleles. And so they're responsible for neuroimbalances that are associated with schizophrenia. GWAS helps us to know which allele is common in schizos. If I say schizos, just get it what I mean. Genetics is, genetics of schizophrenia is complex, so there are many gene variants that are interacting, and because there are so many genes that are responsible for schizophrenia, this disorder is called a polygenic disorder, meaning that more genes are interacting and not only one. So it's a very complex structure. And so also the proteins associated with transportation and breakdown of dopamine in schizophrenic, specifically in schizophrenic condition. The George and the COMT gene, COMT gene, is basically, the problems that arise during cell division is that the strands of DNA, strands mean there are multiple genes attached. So it makes up a strand of DNA, and they get either deleted or duplicated. So it's called a printing error in a biological manual, so it just increases the risk of schizophrenia. And so DiGeorge syndrome is basically a strand of DNA gets deleted, and a one strand of DNA that got deleted was having 30 to 40 genes, and one of them was the COMT gene, which actually codes for an enzyme that breaks down the dopamine. And so the absence, the deletion of this, gene causes schizo symptoms. DISC1 gene basically is associated with GABA neurotransmitter, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It regulates the activity in neural circuits, and it communicates via dopamine. So abnormality and the risk of excess dopaminergic energy basically just increase the risk of schizophrenia. So evaluation is that it is supported by research evidence, and it's a strength. So there are two versions of COMT genes. I forgot to put the T and remove the P. So MET and VAL are the two versions of this gene. VAL is basically associated with decrease in dopamine in prefrontal cortex, and it just decreases the cognitive performance, and that's what schizophrenic patients have. And it affects of the VAL version has a stronger effect in men, when comparing it to women. So the role of the ISC1 gene variant in schizophrenia is that there was a study done on a Scottish family who had 34 members who carried this gene, and 34, all of them had the schizophrenia, and so they carried these genes. It was also experiment was also done in 14 animals. There are different experiments done, and so all said that the impact of DISC1 gene is that it impacts on the presynaptic dopamine deregulation. Also, DISC1 gene is linked with other mental illnesses. Nature versus nurture, MZ and Daisy twins, they live in the same household, but MZs basically, they look similar, they have similar genders, same temperament, everything is similar, so they're more likely to be parented the similar way. But in nurture, you see that in DZ, everything is different. These are two different people, but they're just born at the same time. So you can say that nurture plays a huge role in schizophrenia. Reductionism versus holism, explanation is reduction. It's because it only focuses on genetic factors and it does not take into consideration the individual life experiences and the environmental factors. Um, Biochemical, so there are three theories, or you can say explanations for the dopamine, or for this dopamine hypothesis, you can say. So one is that access of dopamine as a cause of schizophrenia. It was done in 1960s, the most earliest, or you can say it's most late hypotheses. And so it says that in limbic system and mesolimbic pathways, there is access of dopamine. And this access is caused by access of L-dopa, which is a substance that makes dopamine. Synapses overactive due to difference in number of receptors in postsynaptic cell. So if you can see this, these tinies are neurotransmitter, or you can say it's a dopamine, just for the context. These dopamines basically, what they do is, these are the receptors, and because there is a difference in the number of, receptors, what it does is that the synapses become overactive. And since this overactiveness is mainly due to the access of dopamine. But later it was said that dopamine deficiency was a cause of schizophrenia. And so lack in prefrontal cortex, dopamine lacked in prefrontal cortex, and, in mesocortical pathways. So this explains, why there are negative and cognitive symptoms in schizophrenic patients. So disorganized thoughts and speech, were resulted from the problems with dopamine regulation. So dopamine is important when it comes to shifting and directing the attention. So the updated version of this theory, or this hypothesis, was that the overactivity in mesolimbic pathways were due to the excess of D2 dopamine receptors, and low levels of beta hydroxylase, which is basically, it breaks down the dopamine. And dopamine deficiency hypothesis was that it was the brain that is responsible. And the brain, if it sees that there are low levels of dopamine, what it does is that it increases number of receptors at the postsynaptic cell. So this thing, which is the increasing of the receptors, is basically called upregulation. Evaluation of biochemical explanation is that nature versus nurture. So the strength is research evidence. The research was done on rats. They were given amphetamines for 3 weeks, which increases the dopamine activity. So they started showing, schizophrenic behavior, like strange movements. And there was a drug later that was given to them to alleviate these symptoms. Was that the drug blocked the D1 dopamine receptors. Um, Amphetamine is basically a dopamine agonist, meaning it does not block the dopamine. Unlike here, we have chlorpromazine, which blocks the dopamine. So it's an agonist, and this is antagonist. It's the bad guy that blocks the dopamine. It's the good guy that lets the dopamine in. So you can remember it that way. So the narrative plays a role in predicting the impact of our biological role, and it's not the dopamine dysfunction alone that causes schizophrenia. Reductionism versus Holism is that all these hypotheses that we just did are reductionist. They say that a single neurotransmitter, which is dopamine, is responsible for schizophrenia, which is not somehow acceptable now because we have more recent studies that show that's not the case. And clozapine is basically, this is the example that they give. Clozapine is basically blocks the dopamine and serotonin receptor, and it is more effective. It's one, and these are two different neurotransmitters, but chlorpromazine basically blocks one only dopamine, so it's not more effective. So you should take a very holistic approach, and not just this that one transmitter is responsible or a biological explanation. You can take more other world experience and lifestyle choices, meaning mindfulness, and diet that actually changes our neurochemistry. Determinism versus free will is that it's a biological explanation again here, which says the a working brain is responsible. So there was a study done where schizophrenic patients and control group was also there who did not have schizophrenia. They all underwent a PET brain scans, and it showed that in schizophrenic patients there was a decreased binding on prefrontal D1 dopamine receptors. Unlike the non-schizos. You can do this. Pause the video. Next is the cognitive. So faulty information process results in these negative, positive symptoms of schizophrenia. Frith basically said that. So there's one thing which is errors in self-monitoring. So there is this internal monologue. There's inner voice that tells you what to do. For example, you wake up and you're like, okay, now I'm going to go and make some breakfast for myself. So this inner voice is basically an internal monologue. So the cognitive theory is that schizophrenics have basically difficulty in distinguishing these auditory stimuli. They cannot distinguish whether this voice in their head is coming from their head or it's coming from outside, an external source. So they mistakenly perceive that this inner voice is coming from someone else. It could be an alien, it could be their dead relative or anything. And so this external source. So this is self-monitoring error. They wrongly recognize self-monitoring error, and this is called auditory hallucination. Thought insertion is basically hear voices, but you don't know where it is coming from and who is it from. You tend to believe, okay, it's aliens, and then this is a delusion. And so when hallucination and delusions come, it becomes more of like this auditory hallucination. So difficulties in mentalizing. So mentalizing basically is an ability to interpret and understand behaviors of others and of your oneself as well. So when there is a underdeveloped theory of mind, is that the person tends to say that, okay, I am bad, everyone also thinks that I am bad. So just your own thoughts about yourself, you think everyone else is also thinking the same. So if you have done the Baron Cohen et al., it was an eye test, and there were autistic patients, and there was also one control group, and the autistic people were told to identify the emotions through only eyes. So to read the minds through eyes, and they were unable to do that because of an underdeveloped theory of mind, because they could not recognize the emotions, because they also do not have certain kind of emotions, and so it becomes difficult for them to even interpret others' emotions. That's why they kind of hurt people. There's this thing about them that they have this flat effect, like they have no emotions to any highs and lows of it. So difficulties in mentalizing is that adopt this persecutory delusion, this paranoia, that they believe that if a person is, hostile just because they are not, responding, or they are not, they can falsely, make up their own ability, their own understanding of other people's, behavior, which can be a persecutory delusion as well. So thinking errors and biases, it means that they fail to update their abnormal beliefs. For example, as normal human beings are normally us, if we have a one bad experience, we don't conclude it that, okay, the whole thing is bad. For example, we go outside on subway and you have this one bad experience. It could be harassment, it could be anything, and then you don't move from your house, but you have to go out, and you go out, and the next time it doesn't happen, so you just make up your mind, okay, this is a new evidence, this is a new belief, that I am not, no one harassed me, or no one did anything, okay, it's okay, it's fine. And so there's new evidence now, but in schizophrenic patients, they don't update their beliefs. They don't update their abnormal beliefs. So they believe that outside world is dangerous due to one bad experience, and so it causes a negative symptom, which is social withdrawal. So this is why they hold such bizarre beliefs that outside world is so dangerous or something like that. So the evaluation is that it has environmental evidence. It is supported by that. And so Ellen et al. Basically had two groups, one control group and one people with schizophrenia. And so all of them went through the fMRI scans, and while they were going inside the scans, they were listening to a voice. It was pre-recorded audio, and it could be of their own, and it could be of someone else's. But what happened was that schizophrenic patients, they believed that it was someone else's voice, even though it was their own voice. They could not even recognize their own voice, and so their brain activity remained the same. But in non-schizophrenic patients, they were aware of the voices. They knew that it was my voice, and so the brain was showing activity. So this is a biological basis. Information is processed differently among the schizophrenics and non-schizophrenics. Gertie et al., basically, she's a psychologist. She did the experiment with two jars. I'm just giving you one example, is that one had, 85 to 15 ratio beads, meaning that there were more green beads, and there were pink beads, 15 pink beads in one jar, and then the other one also had the same. So in jar A, so they were psychologists basically took out one bead at a time while hiding the jar behind, and they only took out one at a time. And when three were out, the schizophrenic patients were, ready to conclude the whole jar had green because of the first green. So it just shows that how easily they can make conclusions, and so early they can make conclusions on basis of, on basis of fewer beads over here in this experiment. So and they were asked one more beat, and after the fourth beat, they said, okay, that's it. I don't need to see more. There are only green beads in this jar, 85 green beads, and they made the conclusion. But the non-schizophrenic patients, basically, they waited longer. They took more beads out. They asked the psychologist to take more beads out to draw a conclusion that whether the jar had more, beads in it or not. If I don't make any sense, you can search Gertie Dell, and she's a really great psychologist. Um, so the reductionist theory is that um, this explanation was not giving much answers to the questions such as why these cognitive deficits are there in the first place. So if you take a holistic approach, knowing the biological and cognitive and social factors into account, then you can make a more greater conclusion. So there was a cultural fact as well. So, voice hearing basically was not seen distressing in some cultures. For example, by distressing, I mean, for example, think in your head that you're sleeping and all of a sudden you hear a voice of, your grandma or grandmother or grandfather who is not alive, and they're dead, and you're hearing his or her voice. And then you wake up. Either you are scared and you're thinking, oh my god, they're dead, and how they are, talking to me, and you're scared. Or either you might have another thinking process. For example, you think, oh, they're talking to me, they remember me, or taking it in a very light manner, because in some cultures, seen very okay that souls come to you and talk to you. It's seen not distressing, but it could be distressing for some people. So this is individual factor over here. The social factor is that there could be stigma, and there are different attitudes of people in society that shapes our well-being. For example, in India, or India or Pakistan or Muslim countries in general, um, or in countries in general, um, that have very stigma to mental health. And so it's very important to remove that stigma as well. And so it could be that people who say, oh, you're hearing voices, you might be insane, you might be crazy. And so it's stigmatizing. So the nomothetic approach, by all explanations of supporting evidences, for example, um, both all of them were experimental. They were all comparing to non-schizophrenic patients with schizophrenic. So, and they did not take individual differences into account, because schizophrenia is a very heterogeneous disorder. It's very different, and it comes in all forms and different forms in different people, and it has a very complex, as I said, it's very complex. And so people should take a holistic approach, clinical psychologists, not people, and there should be case studies instead of experiments. Pause the video and do these questions by yourself. This is it for the video. I hope you liked it. That's it. Bye.